Close your eyes and picture the desert night of northeastern Utah. Low mesas stretch to the horizon, red rock glowing faintly beneath the moon. In this lonely basin sits a patch of land so infamous, so crowded with stories, that it's known worldwide. Skinwalker Ranch. This isn't just one legend, but a collection of hundreds sightings, curses, scientific studies, and stories passed around firesides. Tonight, I'll tell you 300 disturbing facts about Skinwalker Ranch, one at a time, until you drift into uneasy sleep. Fact 1. The land itself. Skinwalker Ranch covers about 512 acres in Utah's Uinta Basin. Its wide plains and rocky ridges look empty, but generations have whispered that something else lives here, something that never sleeps. Fact 2. The name. The term Skinwalker comes from Navajo legend. Skinwalkers are witches who can shapeshift into animals. Though Navajo people traditionally avoid speaking of them, the ranch's reputation linked it forever with the word. Fact 3. The Ute Curse. The Ute tribe considers the ranch and its surrounding basin cursed, saying, "Skinwalkers roam the land freely there." Oral traditions describe the area as the path of the Skinwalker. Fact 4. Early homesteads. Settlers in the 19th and early 20th centuries tried to farm the land. Many abandoned it, telling stories of strange lights, livestock deaths, and feelings of being watched. Fact 5. The Sherman family. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman bought the ranch. Within months, they reported bizarre animal mutilations, UFOs, and strange creatures near their pastures. Fact 6. The bulletproof wolf. One of the Shermans' first encounters was with an abnormally large wolf. Terry shot it multiple times at close range, but the bullets didn't harm it. It walked away calmly, leaving behind tracks that vanished suddenly in the dirt. Fact 7. The mutilated cattle. The Shermans lost numerous cattle in mysterious ways. Some were found drained of blood, organs removed with surgical precision, yet there were no tracks, predators, or blood trails nearby. Fact 8. The disappearing cattle. On at least one occasion, a cow vanished entirely within minutes. The family searched the pasture and found fresh tracks that simply ended mid-field, as if the animal had been lifted into the sky. Fact 9. The glowing orbs. The Shermans described basketball-sized orbs of light floating over their land. Some were blue, some orange, some white. One orb reportedly disoriented their dogs, leading them into a thicket where the animals were later found dead, burned. Fact 10. The tunnel of lights. Terry once saw what looked like a glowing portal in the sky. Through it, he claimed, he could see daylight and another landscape, as though the ranch had opened a window into somewhere else. Fact 11. Poltergeist activity. Inside their home, the Shermans experienced objects vanishing and reappearing. Groceries were unpacked, later found repacked. Tools disappeared, then returned days later in impossible places. Fact 12. The fear that never left. Even seasoned ranchers like the Shermans admitted they felt constant dread on the property. They spoke of the atmosphere itself seeming wrong, like the land didn't want them there. Fact 13. Neighbors' reports. Families living nearby told of similar experiences, strange lights, cattle deaths, and sightings of massive, wolf-like creatures. The stories predated the Shermans by decades. Fact 14. The NIDS purchase. In 1996, billionaire Robert Bigelow bought the ranch through his National Institute for Discovery Science. His goal? Study the phenomena scientifically. Fact 15. Armed guards. Bigelow hired armed security to patrol the ranch. Even his guards reported strange phenomena, equipment failures, strange sounds, and encounters with shadowy figures. Fact 16. The scientists. NIDS brought in physicists, biologists, and former military personnel. They set up cameras, sensors, and observation posts. Despite their resources, many phenomena seem to deliberately avoid being recorded. Fact 17. The camera sabotage. In one case, surveillance cameras were found, ripped apart wires pulled out, cases shredded. Other cameras watching the same spot recorded nothing at all during the sabotage. Fact 18. The predatory orb. One scientist reported a glowing orb that moved intelligently, reacting to their presence. It seemed to hunt around the ranch, evading attempts to catch or film it. Fact 19. The shadowy figures. Observers claimed to see humanoid shapes standing at the edge of tree lines, figures that vanished instantly when approached. Some were described as 8 feet tall. Fact 20. The unkillable dogs. One of the most chilling stories was of 3 ranch dogs that chased glowing orbs into brush. Moments later, screams were heard. When the Shermans followed, they found only 3 greasy patches on the ground, what was left of their pets. Fact 21. UFOs overhead. The Shermans frequently reported seeing large, silent craft hovering over their property. Some were shaped like classic flying saucers, others like black rectangles gliding against the stars. Fact 22. The daylight portal. One evening, Terry Sherman watched as a glowing oval appeared in the sky. Inside the oval, he swore he could see a bright blue daytime sky. Even though the ranch was cloaked in night, Fact 23. Animals terrified. Even when nothing was visible, the Sherman cattle often panicked, bellowing and crashing against fences. Horses were found shaking, drenched in sweat, refusing to re-enter certain pastures. Fact 24. Vanishing footprints. On several occasions, tracks from large animals, wolves, dogs, and even barefoot human-like prints appeared in the dirt, then stopped suddenly as if the creature had been lifted away. Fact 25. Gigantic birds. Witnesses, including the Shermans, reported seeing birds far larger than any known in Utah creatures, with wingspans over 10 feet, circling silently above the fields. Fact 26. The orange orbs. While many lights were blue or white, large glowing orange orbs were also seen floating low over the ground. Through binoculars, one orb appeared to be a window, showing another landscape. Fact 27. The cattle trailer incident. A herd of cattle was locked in a heavy metal trailer. Minutes later, the animals were found crammed into a single corner, shaking violently, as though something invisible had entered the trailer with them. Fact 28. The magnetic anomalies. Scientists documented strange magnetic fields on the ranch compasses spun wildly, and electronics sometimes failed without explanation. Fact 29. The glowing eyes. Observers often reported glowing red or yellow eyes staring from the trees. When approached, the eyes would vanish, leaving no tracks behind. Fact 30. The camera blackout. At one point, researchers discovered their surveillance equipment had been neatly disabled. Wires were pulled out with surgical precision, yet the cameras meant to watch that area showed nothing at all during the time of tampering. Fact 31. The blue orb pursuit. A small blue orb reportedly followed Terry Sherman and his son through a pasture, maneuvering like it was alive. The dogs that chased it died minutes later. Fact 32. Crop circles. Several times, the Shermans found circles pressed into their fields, with vegetation twisted and bent down. The shapes were clean and precise, unlike animal trails or vehicles. Fact 33. The hovering craft with lights. One night, the family witnessed a large, silent craft hovering only yards above the ground, its underside glowing with bright multicolored lights. Fact 34. The mutilated bull. One prize bull vanished. When found, it was stuffed into a small trailer stall. It couldn't have entered alone. The animal was dead, organs removed without blood, yet there were no tracks nearby. Fact 35. The invisible force. One researcher described being hit by an unseen force, like a blast of energy. He was thrown to the ground, disoriented, but no source could be found. Fact 36. The predator-like creature. Multiple witnesses described seeing an invisible, shimmering figure moving through trees, similar to the camouflaged alien in the movie Predator. Fact 37. Poltergeist tricks. Inside the ranch house, objects often moved. Groceries were unpacked and repacked. Silverware vanished, later found in odd places, like stuffed into fence posts. Fact 38. The silent UFO departure. On one occasion, the Shermans saw a craft rise silently into the air, then vanish instantly, as though it had winked out of existence. Fact 39. The cattle's sixth sense. The Shermans began to believe their cattle could sense the phenomena before they appeared. Animals would cluster or panic seconds before lights were seen. Fact 40. The portal wolf. A large wolf-like creature was reportedly seen emerging from a glowing hole in the air before running off into the night. Fact 41. The ancient petroglyphs. The Ute and Navajo left carvings on canyon walls nearby. Some depict strange humanoid figures with large eyes and odd shapes above them. fueling speculation that the land has been marked by strangeness for centuries. Fact 42. The Cursed Land Divide. Local tribes say the basin was a place of conflict between the Navajo and the Ute. The Ute believed skinwalkers roamed freely here after a curse was placed on the land. Fact 43. The Shermans locked doors. Despite being experienced ranchers, the Shermans began locking every door and window each night. They felt the ranch house itself was under siege by something they couldn't see. Fact 44. The Giant Wolf's Tracks. After the family shot at the massive wolf, they tracked its prints for over a mile until they simply stopped, as if the creature vanished into thin air. Fact 45. The Invisible Humming. Asters, that mating the Prupit is one of the purrs. He will be good if. On multiple nights, the family heard loud humming sounds above the ranch, like machinery. They could see nothing in the sky. Fact 46. The Orange Portal Orbs. Large orange spheres sometimes hovered above the ground. Through them, observers swore they could see daylight and blue skies from another place. Fact 47. The Cattle Mutilation Precision. Veterinarians examined some of the Sherman cattle and found cuts so clean they appeared laser-like, with no blood left in the carcasses. Fact 48. The Endless UFO Reports. Neighbors around the ranch also reported countless UFO sightings for years, describing discs, cigar shapes, and glowing balls of light crossing the skies. Fact 49. The Mutilated Calf. One calf was found dissected only minutes after being tagged. The Shermans left it for a short while. When they returned, it was spread open with precise cuts, eyes gone, blood drained. Fact 50. The Blue Orb Intelligence. Terry Sherman once tried to chase a glowing orb. It dodged him deliberately, weaving in the air as if toying with him. Fact 51. The Voices in the Air. Bigelow's investigators reported hearing human-like voices above them, speaking in unknown languages. No source could ever be found. Fact 52. The Black Triangle. Witnesses described a black triangular craft hovering silently. Its light swept the ground like search beams, but no engines or sound accompanied it. Fact 53. The Mutilated Dogs. The 3 dogs that chased an orb into brush were later found reduced to greasy patches of ash. No predator, no fire, just burned remains. Fact 54. The cattle inside the trailer. 6 cows vanished. Hours later, they were discovered locked inside a tiny trailer stall. It was impossible for them all to fit, yet they were jammed inside, terrified. Fact 55. The Missing Heifer. Another heifer was found dead with a hole carved into its rectum, organs removed, yet no blood anywhere on the grass. Fact 56. The Silent Craft. One massive craft was said to hover silently above the ranch house. Its underside glowed with shifting lights, yet no sound disturbed the air. Fact 57. The Glowing Eyes in Trees. Observers reported bright yellow eyes peering down at them from treetops. When shown with a flashlight, the eyes vanished instantly. Fact 58. The NIDS Frustration. Despite years of monitoring, scientists complained that phenomena seemed to deliberately avoid cameras and sensors as though it was intelligent and evasive. Fact 59. The Mutilated Cow's Jaw. One cow's jaw was stripped of flesh in a perfect circle, tongue removed, eyes missing again with no blood left at the scene. Fact 60. The Researcher's Terror. One NIDS scientist described an overwhelming sense of dread so strong he was unable to step out of his vehicle, convinced something unseen was watching him. Fact 61. The Disembodied Growls. Investigators heard guttural growls echoing in the dark pastures. Dogs refused to move toward the sound, tails tucked, trembling as though the ground itself rumbled. Fact 62. The Invisible Barrier. One researcher described hitting an unseen force field in the pasture, like walking into solid glass. His equipment bounced off as if striking metal, though nothing was there. Fact 63. The Thermal Vision Anomaly. On thermal cameras, glowing figures sometimes appeared, crawling through trees or running across fields. To the naked eye, nothing was visible. Fact 64. The Cattle in Trance. A herd was once found standing in perfect formation, shoulder to shoulder, staring silently in the same direction, unmoving for hours. Fact 65. The Shadow Overhead. Witnesses described a massive black shadow blotting out stars. It hovered silently, so large it seemed to cover the entire pasture. Fact 66. The Living Lights. Unlike static UFOs, the orbs behaved like living creatures swooping, dodging, weaving around trees as if playing with those who chased them. Fact 67. The radioactive hotspots. Scientists detected sudden bursts of radiation in certain ranch areas. Levels spiked high enough to be dangerous, then dropped instantly back to normal. Fact 68. The mutilated bull. A prized breeding bull disappeared for hours. When found, it was dead, organs surgically removed. Its carcass lay untouched by scavengers, as if even animals avoided it. Fact 69. The whispering voices. Multiple visitors reported voices whispering in their ears, in languages they didn't understand. Sometimes the voices called their names. Fact 70. The light tunnel. At least one researcher saw a glowing tunnel of light appear above the ground, with a dark figure crawling out before the tunnel snapped shut. Fact 71. The homestead's dread. The small abandoned homestead structures on the ranch carry an oppressive atmosphere. Visitors report sudden nausea, dizziness, and feelings of being watched. Fact 72. The malfunctioning gear. High-tech cameras and recording devices often failed. Batteries drained instantly, memory cards wiped, or files vanished altogether. Fact 73. The mutilated calf fetus. A newborn calf was killed within minutes of birth. Its body was found peeled open with surgical precision, organs removed, but no blood spilled. Fact 74. The invisible predator. One scientist claimed he saw a shimmering, nearly invisible creature climbing out of a glowing hole in the sky. The shape slinked into the darkness like a camouflaged hunter. Fact 75. The electromagnetic pulse. Car engines sometimes died near the ranch, radios filled with static, and compasses spun uselessly, as if the land itself erased direction. Fact 76. The glowing ground. On rare nights, parts of the soil itself glowed faintly, as though lit from below. Digging revealed nothing unusual. Fact 77. The dark one. A witness described seeing a huge humanoid shape, with no facial features standing by the fence line. It remained perfectly still before vanishing. Fact 78. The mutilated steer. A steer was found with its reproductive organs removed, anus cored, and flesh around its mouth carved away. There were no signs of struggle, no predator tracks. Fact 79. The orbs that burned. Some glowing spheres emitted intense heat. One melted the tops of fence posts as it floated past, leaving scorch marks behind. Fact 80. The ever-present dread. Every visitor, rancher, scientist, guard described the same thing. An overwhelming sense of dread, as if the land itself was alive and hostile to human presence. Fact 81. The calf that vanished. A calf was tagged and left in the pasture. Within 45 minutes, it was gone. The only trace, a patch of dried, brittle grass where its body had supposedly lain, as if exposed to high radiation. Fact 82. The camera sabotage mystery. NIDS scientists once set up a row of cameras. One night, all three were torn apart simultaneously. Wires and housing were scattered. Nearby cameras recorded nothing, as though reality skipped. Fact 83. The phantom tracks. Investigators followed enormous footprints, much larger than any humans across a snow-covered field. The prints abruptly stopped, mid-stride, with no sign of turning or retreat. Fact 84. The howling sky. On some nights, the sky itself seemed to groan or howl. The sound wasn't wind, it pulsed like machinery turning deep above the clouds. Fact 85. The mutilated cow with no smell. A dead cow was discovered with its organs gone, yet no odor of rot or blood filled the air, as though its flesh had been sterilized. Fact 86. The vanishing shadows. Scientists describe tall, humanoid shadows appearing at tree lines. When approached, they vanished instantly, not fading, but blinking out. Fact 87. The path of orbs. Glowing spheres sometimes flew in formations, weaving between trees as though tracing deliberate paths across the land. Fact 88. The bulletproof beast. The enormous wolf, shot by the Shermans impervious to bullets, was one of the earliest and most terrifying encounters. Its hide seemed to shrug off rifle rounds. Fact 89. The alien figure. On one night, investigators with night vision saw a tall figure crouched in a tree. It glowed on infrared, but was invisible to the naked eye. Fact 90. The silent craft with spotlight. A massive object hovered silently, shining a spotlight that illuminated the ground. When observers tried to approach, it vanished instantly. Fact 91. The mutilated cow with carved ear. One cow was found with its ear removed in a perfect circle, flesh cauterized, no bleeding, as though done with advanced tools. Fact 92. The humming power line. Observers noticed power lines above the ranch, humming violently whenever lights appeared in the sky. Instruments spiked with electromagnetic activity. Fact 93. The glowing red eyes. Hunters reported seeing pairs of glowing red eyes larger than a man staring at them from the darkness, then vanishing without sound. Fact 94. The buried object. Ground-penetrating radar revealed large metallic shapes beneath the soil, buried deep under the ranch. Excavations were inconclusive, but anomalies remained. Fact 95. The cattle stack. At least once, investigators found cattle piled unnaturally on top of one another. No tracks showed how they'd been moved. Fact 96. The tunnel watcher. Thermal scopes revealed a humanoid figure crawling out of a glowing tunnel of light. Witnesses froze in shock. By the time they blinked, it was gone. Fact 97. The mutilated calf with no blood. One calf was completely dismembered, flesh peeled back, eyes gone, yet the ground was clean, as if all fluids had been vacuumed away. Fact 98. The animal's refusal. Horses sometimes refused to enter parts of the pasture, no matter how hard they were driven. Dogs cowered in barns, trembling at invisible threats. Fact 99. The orbs that reacted. Orbs often seemed to respond to human presence, darting closer, circling people, then flying away as if teasing them. Fact 100. The ranch as a conscious force. Researchers concluded that the phenomena behaved like an intelligence, evasive, manipulative, choosing when to appear, and often mocking attempts to study it. Fact 101. The phantom screams. Visitors have reported hearing blood-curdling screams echoing across the ranch. Sometimes the sounds resembled animals, sometimes human voices. No source was ever found. Fact 102. The mutilated cow under surveillance. NIDS scientists once placed cameras on a herd to protect them. Despite constant monitoring, one cow was mutilated within minutes. The cameras caught nothing, only a sudden blackout during the event. Fact 103. The sudden illnesses. Investigators occasionally developed sudden nausea, migraines, and nosebleeds on the property, symptoms that vanished once they left the ranch. Fact 104. The glowing fog. On several occasions, a thick fog rolled across the fields, glowing faintly from within. Cattle refused to enter the mist. Fact 105. The poltergeist prankster. Tools and equipment went missing constantly. Wrenches, hammers, and stakes would vanish, then reappear stacked neatly in strange places, like on high fence posts. Fact 106. The cattle's silent panic. Sometimes entire herds would stampede with no predator nearby. Other times, they froze in unnatural silence, eyes wide, not moving a muscle. Fact 107. The levitating object. Investigators once saw a large glowing orb lift off the ground and float across a pasture, illuminating trees as it moved. Fact 108. The animal carcass avoidance. Scavengers, coyotes, vultures, insects refused to touch mutilated cattle on the ranch. Days later, the carcasses still lay intact, untouched by nature. Fact 109. The black humanoid shadow. A tall, shadowy figure was spotted moving across a ridge. Through night vision, its outline was clear, a human-like body, but it had no face. Fact 110. The buzzing sky. The air itself sometimes buzzed with an electric hum, vibrating tools and fence wires. Witnesses compared it to standing near massive power lines. Fact 111. The portal opening. One team saw a circular light appear mid-air. Through it, they swore they could see a different sky, with daylight and unfamiliar terrain. Fact 112. The mutilated bull with missing eye. A bull was found dead, its eye socket perfectly cored out. Veterinarians confirmed the cut was too precise to be natural. Fact 113. The eerie silence. On certain nights, the entire ranch fell silent. No crickets, no coyotes, no wind. Witnesses described the silence as suffocating, as if the world paused. Fact 114. The invisible attackers. At least one investigator was shoved to the ground by an unseen force. He described the sensation as being hit by a solid wall. Fact 115. The circling lights. Glowing orbs sometimes circled above the family's house. When pursued, they shot straight into the sky and disappeared. Fact 116. The cattle frozen in fear. One herd was discovered standing motionless in the snow for hours, their bodies stiff, as if hypnotized. Fact 117. The blue spotlight. Witnesses saw a beam of bright blue light shine down from above, illuminating a single spot in a field. Nothing made the light, and it vanished instantly. Fact 118. The living shadows. Some visitors reported shadows moving inside the ranch house, even when the rooms were empty. The figures were tall, human-shaped, and silent. Fact 119. The howling wind that isn't wind. On calm nights, investigators described hearing wind roar through the trees, yet the air around them remained perfectly still. Fact 120. The inescapable dread. Above all, every person who spent time at Skinwalker Ranch agrees on one thing: the overwhelming sense of dread. It presses on your chest, makes your skin crawl, and lingers long after you leave. Fact 121. The predator shimmer. One scientist reported seeing a distortion in the air, shaped like a large creature moving on all fours. It blended with its surroundings, like a camouflaged predator. Fact 122. The mutilated cow with missing tongue. A rancher found a cow dead, its tongue cut out with surgical precision. The wound edges were cauterized, no blood spilled. Fact 123. The voices from above. Multiple researchers described hearing conversations in the sky above them. They weren't English strange guttural languages that faded when approached. Fact 124. The sudden battery drains. Expensive cameras and meters suddenly drained completely when lights appeared. Minutes later, the batteries worked as if nothing had happened. Fact 125. The orange glowing sphere. An orange orb hovered low in a field. Through binoculars, one witness swore he could see something moving inside it, as if it were a window. Fact 126. The creature in the tree. Using night vision, researchers saw a humanoid figure crouched in a cottonwood tree. It glowed on infrared, but remained invisible to the naked eye. Fact 127. The ground tremors. On still nights, the ground sometimes shook violently, like an earthquake. Seismographs later showed no seismic activity recorded in the area. Fact 128. The mutilated bull surrounded by silence. One prized bull was found dead, organs missing. With the entire area silent, no birds, no insects, no wind. Fact 129. The Black Triangle Craft. A black triangular UFO hovered over the ranch, lights glowing at its corners. Witnesses described a strange buzzing sound that rattled their bones. Fact 130. The cattle lifted. One cow was seen being lifted several feet off the ground by a beam of light. Moments later, it was dropped, dead, in the same spot. Fact 131. The Tunnel Watcher. Through night vision, observers saw what looked like a portal opening above the ground. A dark figure crawled out before the light blinked shut. Fact 132. The shadow that followed. One investigator reported being trailed by a tall, dark silhouette that moved when he moved. When he turned, it wasn't there. Fact 133. The mutilated calf with precise cuts. A newborn calf was found cut open minutes after birth. All 4 legs were broken, organs removed, but there were no predator marks. Fact 134. The high-pitched hum. Witnesses often reported a strange high-pitched humming in their ears when phenomena appeared. Some compared it to standing near a tuning fork. Fact 135. The glowing mist. A pale mist sometimes drifted across fields, glowing faintly. One scientist stepped into it and reported overwhelming terror, despite nothing being visible inside. Fact 136. The animals stacked. More than once, dead animals were found piled unnaturally on top of each other, with no tracks or sign of how they were moved. Fact 137. The mutilated bull without organs. One bull's body was discovered emptied entirely of organs, yet its skin remained intact. No incision marks were visible. Fact 138. The buzzing orb. A small, glowing sphere zipped past researchers, buzzing like a swarm of bees. Their electronics failed instantly as it passed. Fact 139. The unkillable wolf returns. The same massive wolf that shrugged off bullets in the Sherman era was reportedly seen years later by investigators. Unchanged, its eyes glowing faintly. Fact 140. The intelligence. Scientists concluded the activity seemed controlled, as if the phenomenon was aware of their presence, responding, retreating, and even mocking their attempts to capture it. Fact 141. The phantom footsteps. Investigators often heard footsteps pacing around them in the dark. When lights shone, no tracks were visible in the dirt. Fact 142. The humming overhead. On calm nights, a mechanical humming filled the air above the house. Radar sweeps found nothing in the sky. Fact 143. The mutilated horse. One horse was found dead, its body cut with precision. No blood, no struggle, no tracks, just surgical wounds in the flesh. Fact 144. The disembodied voices indoors. Inside the ranch house, the Shermans heard voices whispering in empty rooms. Sometimes they called names. Fact 145. The orbs with minds of their own. Scientists noted that glowing orbs seemed to change direction in midair, evading pursuit, almost like intelligent drones. Fact 146. The black void above the mesa. A dark patch of sky hovered above the mesa ridge, darker than the night sky itself, swallowing stars behind it. Fact 147. The magnetic compass spins. Compasses in certain parts of the ranch spun wildly, as though magnetic north shifted by the second. Fact 148. The mutilated cow with broken legs. One carcass showed broken bones with no sign of external struggle, as if it had been dropped from above. Fact 149. The missing dogs. Beyond the 3 that burned, other dogs sometimes ran into the fields and never came back. Fact 150. The invisible pusher. Investigators described being shoved suddenly, as if a massive unseen hand struck them. Fact 151. The dark tunnel of sky. One night, a researcher claimed to see a dark tunnel open in the sky, through which lights poured out like stars spilling onto the land. Fact 152. The glowing red mist. Witnesses reported a low red mist that smelled of sulfur drifting across the pastures. Fact 153. The mutilated cow with missing jaw. The flesh from one cow's jaw was removed in a perfect circle, bones scraped clean. Fact 154. The shadow figure peering in. At night, Gwen Sherman saw a black silhouette with glowing eyes looking through her kitchen window. Fact 155. The mysterious cattle deaths. In 1 year, the Shermans lost 14 cows, all to strange circumstances, none to predators. Fact 156. The orbs that split apart. Glowing spheres sometimes divided into 2 or 3 separate orbs before merging back together. Fact 157. The buzzing under the ground. Some researchers reported hearing buzzing noises beneath their feet, as if machinery churned underground. Fact 158. The mutilated cow with no rectum. In one case, an animal's rectum was cored out with clean edges, flesh cauterized, no blood spilled. Fact 159. The shifting shadows. Even in full daylight, shadows on the ranch sometimes moved opposite the sun, sliding in unnatural directions. Fact 160. The feeling of being hunted. Nearly every witness described the same sensation, the uncanny certainty that they were being stalked, watched, and toyed with by something intelligent. Fact 161. The flickering stars. On some nights, stars above the ranch didn't just twinkle. They flickered on and off completely, entire constellations vanishing for minutes before reappearing. Fact 162. The cow carved with precision. Veterinarians noted that cuts on mutilated cattle were made with such surgical accuracy that even modern hospital equipment would struggle to replicate them. Fact 163. The phantom helicopter. Ranchers sometimes heard the roar of rotor blades overhead, shaking the ground, but when they looked up, no helicopter was visible in the sky. Fact 164. The glowing green eyes. At night, investigators spotted pairs of bright green eyes glowing in total darkness, positioned at heights far taller than any natural animal. Fact 165. The radiation hotspots. Certain locations around the ranch measured sudden spikes of radiation, dangerous to humans, before dropping back to normal within minutes. Fact 166. The giant wolf footprints. Massive wolf-like tracks were found in the mud, but they led into open fields and simply stopped, as if the creature vanished mid-stride. Fact 167. The moving lights underground. Through ground-penetrating radar, scientists once detected glowing anomalies moving beneath the soil, almost like vehicles or living things. Fact 168. The cow drained of blood. One mutilated cow was discovered completely bloodless, its circulatory system emptied with no trace of spillage. Fact 169. The poltergeist in the house. Inside the ranch home, objects shifted constantly. Silverware disappeared, doors slammed, and groceries were unpacked and restacked in strange places. Fact 170. The drill noises. Witnesses heard what sounded like heavy machinery drilling far underground, though no construction ever occurred in the area. Fact 171. The calf dissected in daylight. A calf was discovered, mutilated in broad daylight. The ranchers had left it alone for less than an hour. When they returned, it was dead. Organs gone. Fact 172. The shadow wolf. A wolf-shaped shadow appeared against a barn wall one night, but no animal was present to cast it. Fact 173. The cattle vanishing. On several occasions, cows completely disappeared from fenced pastures, never to be seen again. Fact 174. The strange symbols. Mysterious markings, like geometric glyphs, were sometimes found burned into the ground after UFO sightings. Fact 175. The second sky. Some investigators swore they glimpsed another sky glowing daylight through aerial portals that opened for mere seconds. Fact 176. The mutilated sheep. Not just cattle, but sheep were found mutilated in the same surgical style eyes, tongues, and organs removed bloodlessly. Fact 177. The invisible wall. One ATV rider slammed into something solid in an open field, thrown violently, though no fence, rock, or obstacle was there. Fact 178. The luminous blue figure. Witnesses described a tall humanoid glowing faintly blue, walking across the pasture before vanishing into thin air. Fact 179. The cattle crushed together. In one case, 4 full-grown cows were discovered crammed into a tiny trailer stall, their bodies packed tightly, as if teleported there. Fact 180. The watchers on the ridge. At night, figures were often spotted standing motionless on the ridge overlooking the ranch. They never approached, never moved, but they were always watching. Fact 181. The vanishing voices. Researchers recorded strange conversations in unknown languages, but when they replayed the audio later, the voices were gone, leaving only static. Fact 182. The melted dog collars. After the 3 dogs were incinerated by glowing orbs, their collars were found fused into puddles of melted material. Fact 183. The blue orbs attacking cattle. Witnesses saw glowing blue orbs actively circling cows, which panicked and stampeded in terror. Fact 184. The shadow inside the house. Gwen Sherman once reported a black humanoid shadow moving from room to room inside her home, even while all the doors were locked. Fact 185. The alien insects. Researchers spotted strange, oversized insect-like creatures near the river. When approached, they vanished as if made of light. Fact 186. The cattle dragged. Dead cows were often found far from where they had last been seen, dragged without tracks, sometimes moved miles overnight. Fact 187. The hovering lights above the homestead. Bright white orbs sometimes hovered just feet above the house, illuminating the roof like silent searchlights. Fact 188. The mutilated cow with heart missing. In one case, an animal's heart was removed surgically while the ribcage remained intact. Fact 189. The cloaked UFO. Infrared scopes captured a massive disc-shaped craft hovering above the ranch, invisible to the naked eye. Fact 190. The bizarre animal hybrids. Witnesses occasionally reported animals that looked like unnatural hybrids, a dog with cat-like features, or a cow with oddly human-like eyes. Fact 191. The invisible predator. Several witnesses described the sensation of being stalked by something large and unseen, with heavy breathing audible just behind them. Fact 192. The frozen cow carcass. A mutilated cow was found stiff and frozen solid in warm weather, as though flash frozen instantly. Fact 193. The portal of light. Scientists once observed a hole of light open mid-air, through which a large dark creature crawled before the portal snapped shut. Fact 194. The eerie silence dome. At times, a bubble of silence dropped over sections of the ranch. No wind, no crickets, no sound of any kind. Fact 195. The livestock herded unnaturally. Entire groups of cattle were discovered bunched tightly together in fear, pressed against fences, eyes wide in panic. Fact 196. The skinless calf. One calf was found stripped of hide entirely, its skin removed in one flawless sheet. Fact 197. The metallic taste. People often reported tasting metal in their mouths before or during paranormal events, as if the air itself changed composition. Fact 198. The glowing humanoid tracks. Footprints shaped like bare human feet, but glowing faintly, were once found leading across the pasture, ending abruptly in open ground. Fact 199. The invisible scream. One night, ranchers heard a cow scream as if attacked. When they reached the sound, nothing was there, but the ground was torn up in circles. Fact 200. The phenomenon learns. Scientists admitted that the phenomenon appeared to adapt to their presence, changing tactics and escalating its manifestations to avoid being studied. Fact 201. The metal spheres underground. Ground scans revealed large, metallic-looking spheres buried deep under the ranch, but attempts to drill toward them were mysteriously thwarted. Fact 202. The glowing trap lights. Blue orbs often hovered low to the ground, deliberately luring dogs and livestock away from the homestead before attacks occurred. Fact 203. The psychic backlash. Some researchers claim their thoughts were interfered with sudden intrusive images of mutilations, violent accidents, and even suicide. Fact 204. The cow with missing tongue. In several cases, mutilated cattle were missing tongues cut with such precision that not even a drop of blood remained. Fact 205. The sound of chanting. Witnesses heard eerie chanting in unknown languages echoing across the mesa at night, though no people were found. Fact 206. The teleporting equipment. Expensive gear left locked inside cases was sometimes discovered scattered across fields the next morning, miles away, undamaged. Fact 207. The frozen silence before attacks. Animals often went silent and froze before paranormal events, a warning sign that something was about to manifest. Fact 208. The orange UFO. On one occasion, a large orange sphere hovered above the pasture, then shot into the sky at impossible speed. Fact 209. The cow left inside a trailer. A full-grown cow was somehow placed inside a locked trailer without breaking doors, locks, or leaving tracks. Fact 210. The phantom headlights. Pairs of headlights often appeared on distant roads, moving toward the ranch, before vanishing into the air. Fact 211. The strange voices in the air. Investigators reported disembodied voices speaking overhead, as though broadcast from invisible speakers. Fact 212. The animal levitations. Witnesses claim to see cows lifted silently into the air by invisible forces before being dropped lifelessly. Fact 213. The shredded bulls. Large bulls were discovered with hide shredded into strips, yet no blood spilled into the dirt. Fact 214. The hummingbird drone. Tiny metallic objects, shaped like insects, were spotted hovering, possibly mechanical surveillance devices of unknown origin. Fact 215. The missing time episodes. Several researchers reported hours of lost time, suddenly realizing entire nights had passed in what felt like minutes. Fact 216. The shimmering doorways. Shimmering rectangles of light occasionally appeared, like glowing door frames suspended in the air. Fact 217. The animal panic. Horses and cows sometimes broke fences in terror, fleeing miles into the desert, as if chased by invisible predators. Fact 218. The cow with missing liver. A cow was found with its liver surgically removed, while the body cavity showed cauterized wounds, no bleeding. Fact 219. The black mass in the trees. Witnesses described a formless black blob hovering in the branches of trees, shifting like liquid shadow. Fact 220. The phenomenon taunting scientists. Researchers admitted they often felt mocked, as if the phenomenon deliberately presented itself, then erased all proof by morning. Fact 221. The light beams from the ground. Witnesses saw shafts of intense light shoot upward from the earth itself, as though something underground was signaling to the sky. Fact 222. The watchers in the trees. Tall, humanoid shapes were often seen crouching in tree branches, completely still, glowing eyes staring down. Fact 223. The magnetized rocks. Certain stones on the ranch became magnetized overnight, despite being normal before. Compasses spun wildly when brought near them. Fact 224. The cows stacked in bizarre ways. On one occasion, 2 mutilated cows were discovered stacked on top of each other, perfectly balanced. Fact 225. The UFO that dissolved. A metallic craft hovered for several minutes, then slowly dissolved like smoke dispersing into the air. Fact 226. The field of dead birds. Hundreds of birds were once found dead in a neat circle, their bodies unburned but seemingly drained of life. Fact 227. The silent aircraft. Massive aircraft-sized shadows passed overhead without sound, blotting out the stars before fading away. Fact 228. The animal tracks that changed. Footprints in the snow started as wolf tracks, then, halfway across the field, shifted into human-like prints. Fact 229. The constant drone hum. At night, a low mechanical hum often filled the valley, but no machines were ever found. Fact 230. The figure in the pasture. A glowing humanoid figure was once seen running across the field at inhuman speeds, before vanishing mid-stride. Fact 231. The tree that burned inside. One tree appeared perfectly normal outside, but inside the trunk, it was charred black, as though burned from within. Fact 232. The mutilated horse. Not just cattle, but horses too, were found, mutilated organs removed with precision. No blood spilled. Fact 233. The portals that opened in the sky. Several witnesses described seeing rectangular openings in the sky, with landscapes on the other side that didn't belong to Utah. Fact 234. The collapsing stars. Stars above the ranch sometimes collapsed inward like dying suns, then snapped back into existence seconds later. Fact 235. The bloodless coyotes. Coyotes were occasionally found dead with puncture wounds and no blood left in their bodies. Fact 236. The moving mists. Dark, fog-like mists moved against the wind, drifting with intention, often preceding UFO sightings. Fact 237. The cattle branded by light. Some cows were found with strange burn marks on their hides, as though seared by beams of light. Fact 238. The predatory growls. Deep growls echoed across the ranch at night, louder than any wolf or bear, but no creature was ever located. Fact 239. The reversed sky. On one occasion, researchers reported the night sky above the ranch looking inverted stars moving the wrong direction. Fact 240. The phenomenon following people home. Terrifyingly, many who worked at the ranch claimed the activity followed them back to their houses, tormenting their families. Fact 241. The black helicopters. Unmarked black helicopters frequently circled the ranch, sometimes flying dangerously low, but never responding to communication attempts. Fact 242. The shifting shadows inside homes. Residents describe dark shapes moving across walls, as though cast by figures that weren't physically present. Fact 243. The cow crushed internally. A cow was found dead with all of its internal organs liquefied, but its body showed no external trauma. Fact 244. The sudden bright flashes. Explosions of light like giant camera flashes illuminated entire fields, leaving animals disoriented and panicked. Fact 245. The human-like footprints with claws. Large barefoot prints were discovered that looked human except for long claws extending from the toes. Fact 246. The telepathic voice. Some investigators claim they heard clear voices inside their minds, warning them to leave the ranch immediately. Fact 247. The mutilated calf in daylight. One calf was mutilated in broad daylight within 45 minutes, while ranchers were just hundreds of yards away. Fact 248. The craft within the mountain. Thermal scans once showed what looked like a massive heat signature of a craft buried inside the mesa. Fact 249. The magnetic interference. Phones, radios, and GPS often failed on the ranch, sometimes spinning wildly before shutting down completely. Fact 250. The faceless figure. Witnesses describe seeing a humanoid shape without a face, standing silently in the tree line. Fact 251. The sky grid. Through night vision, a faint glowing grid pattern was seen in the sky, as if reality itself was a structured dome. Fact 252. The mutilated cow with perfect circles. Circular holes were found cut into an animal's hide, edges so smooth they looked like made by laser. Fact 253. The hovering black cube. A solid black cube, suspended inside a translucent sphere, was spotted floating silently above the fields. Fact 254. The giant wolf reappears. The same massive wolf that was shot multiple times and survived unharmed was spotted years later, identical and unchanged. Fact 255. The cattle herded into tight cages. Large animals somehow ended up crammed together into small enclosures that should have been impossible for them to fit into. Fact 256. The sound of machinery underground. On quiet nights, people reported the distant rumble of heavy machinery coming from beneath the mesa. Fact 257. The glowing veins in the soil. Certain patches of ground glowed faintly at night, as if veins of light ran just below the surface. Fact 258. The pale humanoid crawling. A pale, hairless humanoid figure was once spotted crawling unnaturally fast across a field before vanishing into shadow. Fact 259. The mutilated cow with intact hide. One cow was found with all internal organs removed, yet the hide had no visible cuts or openings. Fact 260. The phenomenon stalking families. Even after leaving the ranch, many reported the same lights, shadows, and mutilations following them to their new homes. Fact 261. The melted cow. One mutilated cow was discovered with its flesh seemingly melted, as though exposed to extreme radiation or heat, yet the surrounding grass was untouched. Fact 262. The white orb that chased a truck. A glowing orb the size of a basketball pursued a rancher's pickup for miles, weaving in and out of the road like it was playing. Fact 263. The phantom thunder. Loud cracks of thunder sometimes shook the valley on clear nights, but there were no storms anywhere nearby. Fact 264. The invisible wall. Researchers occasionally walked into invisible barriers that felt solid as stone, though nothing was visibly there. Fact 265. The triangle UFO. A massive triangular craft was spotted hovering silently over the ranch, its three lights glowing faintly before vanishing. Fact 266. The cattle with holes through bone. Some mutilated animals had precise circular holes drilled through their bones, something no predator could achieve. Fact 267. The scanning beam. A thin laser-like beam once swept across the ground, moving methodically as if searching, before shutting off instantly. Fact 268. The shadow that passed through fences. Witnesses described a humanoid shadow gliding across the pasture and moving through barbed wire without disturbing it. Fact 269. The animals stacked in trees. Small livestock were sometimes found placed high in tree branches with no tracks or ladder access. Fact 270. The ground that pulsed. On some nights, the soil itself seemed to throb like a heartbeat, faint vibrations radiating outward. Fact 271. The mirrored sky. The night sky above the ranch sometimes looked mirrored, with constellations reversed as if reflected in water. Fact 272. The blood-red mist. A glowing red mist rolled across the fields one night, causing nausea and burning eyes in witnesses who breathed it in. Fact 273. The cloaked creature. Something large moved across a field, but appeared only as a shimmering distortion, like heat waves made solid. Fact 274. The glowing cattle eyes. Dead cattle were sometimes found with eyes glowing faintly, even days after death. Fact 275. The human-like scream. Witnesses described hearing piercing screams in the night that sounded like women but came from deep in the woods. Fact 276. The trench that appeared overnight, a massive trench, perfectly dug, was discovered one morning, with no tracks or machinery evidence around it. Fact 277. The predator vision. Through night vision goggles, some witnesses reported seeing a tall, invisible creature, outlined like the heat shimmer from the Predator films. Fact 278. The cattle that vanished mid-drive. A group of cows herded toward the corral was seen walking in line and in plain view. Several simply disappeared. Fact 279. The false daylight. On several occasions, the ranch lit up as bright as noon in the middle of the night, before plunging back into darkness. Fact 280. The living shadows. Dark figures weren't just seen on walls, they sometimes rose from the ground itself, stretching like sentient silhouettes. Fact 281. The silent explosion. A huge explosion lit the valley one night, bright enough to see for miles, but there was no sound, no shockwave, and no crater. Fact 282. The animal that reanimated. A mutilated calf was once reported to twitch and move hours after being declared dead, before going still again. Fact 283. The ground that opened. Witnesses describe seeing the earth split open like a fissure, glowing light inside, then seal itself shut moments later. Fact 284. The orb that entered a cow. A glowing orb was seen merging directly into the body of a cow, which later turned up mutilated in typical ranch fashion. Fact 285. The air that burned skin. Invisible pockets of air sometimes burn the skin of those who walk through them, leaving red welts. Fact 286. The human figure in the mesa. Through night vision, researchers once claimed to see a massive human-shaped figure standing inside the mesa, as though embedded in stone. Fact 287. The unnatural silence. At times, every sound, wind, insects, animals would vanish completely, creating a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. Fact 288. The disassembled equipment. Complex camera rigs left overnight were found completely dismantled the next morning, screws removed and wires neatly arranged. Fact 289. The four-legged shadow. A black dog-like shadow roamed the fields, but when chased, it stretched upward into a humanoid outline before vanishing. Fact 290. The glowing eyes in the sky. Two massive glowing orbs hung in the night sky for hours, resembling eyes staring down at the ranch. Fact 291. The repeating dreams. Investigators who stayed on the ranch often reported identical nightmares of tall, faceless beings surrounding their beds. Fact 292. The humming wire. One section of barbed wire fence hummed like a tuning fork for days, though no wind or vibration explained it. Fact 293. The cow levitation. A living cow was once seen lifted several feet into the air by an invisible force, kicking frantically before being dropped. Fact 294. The sudden illness. Visitors sometimes developed violent flu-like symptoms on the ranch, only to recover the instant they left the property. Fact 295. The guardian lights. Some ranchers began to think of the orbs as guardians. They seemed to punish intruders and interfere with outsiders while leaving locals untouched. Fact 296. The figure in the window. While one rancher's family was eating dinner, a massive humanoid face peered through their second-story window. Fact 297. The air that shimmered like water. On hot days, the air sometimes shimmered with a watery effect, except it rippled against the wind, like a veil. Fact 298. The returning cattle. Cattle that disappeared were sometimes found weeks later, wandering aimlessly alive but scarred, as if experimented on. Fact 299. The reality glitch. One investigator described seeing the ranch flicker, as though reality itself glitched a frame skip in the world. Fact 300. The enduring curse. Even decades later, those who've lived, worked, or even just visited Skinwalker Ranch say it never truly lets them go. Dreams, sightings, and strange occurrences follow them for the rest of their lives. The wolves that shouldn't exist. The very first terrifying encounter on the ranch still stands as one of the most unforgettable, the giant wolf. Imagine a predator the size of a horse, casually strolling into a corral full of calves. It didn't attack with frantic desperation the way a normal animal would. It walked slowly, deliberately, and even allowed itself to be touched by the rancher's hand. For a moment, the family believed they were seeing some strange, abnormally tame animal, but when it snapped its massive jaws around the neck of a calf, the calm dissolved into violence. The rancher unloaded bullets into the wolf point-blank, powerful rounds. Any ordinary animal would have collapsed instantly, but the creature didn't even flinch. It simply turned, looked at the humans with calm, intelligent eyes, and then walked away. Only when the trail was followed did the evidence shift from impossible to terrifying. The paw prints, so large they could belong to no natural wolf, simply stopped in the middle of the muddy ground, as though the creature had vanished into thin air. To this day, that story remains one of the most cited pieces of evidence, not because it's the strangest, but because it captures the theme of Skinwalker Ranch. Predators that shouldn't exist, walking calmly through our world, immune to our weapons, and leaving behind only broken logic in their wake. Orbs of intelligence. The orbs, too, seem to operate with deliberate will. Some researchers believe they are living entities themselves, rather than technology. Witnesses have described them not just as glowing lights, but as playful, almost mocking presences. They would hover near people, dart away when approached, and even maneuver in ways that suggested they were studying or toying with their human observers. Cattle seemed to fear them most. Entire herds would stampede if the orbs appeared, often resulting in injuries or lost livestock. For the ranchers, it wasn't just eerie light shows in the sky. It was economic ruin, physical danger, and the creeping sense of being treated as part of someone else's cruel experiment. The ranch as a portal. Some scientists, especially those working with the NIDS team in the late 90s, began to theorize that the ranch itself wasn't just haunted or cursed. It was a kind of portal zone. Not a single doorway, but an unstable patchwork of overlapping realities. The glowing holes in the sky, where crafts and creatures were seen to emerge, gave weight to the idea. The flickering distortions that swallowed cattle suggested the same. If this is true, then the land is less like a haunted house and more like a cosmic fault line. Energy, beings, and even laws of physics may leak through, creating chaos in a place that feels half tethered to Earth and half adrift in something alien. The curse. The local Ute tribe long warned of the dangers of that land. According to oral tradition, the Navajo had once cursed the region during intertribal conflict, summoning creatures known as skinwalkers, malevolent shapeshifters who could take the form of wolves, coyotes, or even human-like monstrosities. For the Ute, the ranch was forbidden ground, a place you didn't linger after dark. Skeptics might dismiss the curse as coincidence, but the ranchers who lived there would disagree. Too many of the phenomena took on distinctly folkloric shapes. The wolf immune to bullets, the shadowy humanoids that stalked the tree line, the phantom voices that lured people outside. It was as if the land itself remembered the old stories and acted them out. The psychological grip. Perhaps most disturbing of all is how the ranch clings to people long after they leave. Former owners report years of nightmares, sleep paralysis, and strange sightings in their new homes. Researchers who only visited for a short time found themselves haunted by repeating dreams, sudden illnesses, and technological disturbances even states away. The idea that Skinwalker Ranch is not just a place, but a contagion of experience, is one of the most unsettling. It raises the question, once you look too long into this abyss, does it follow you home? If there is one element that turns Skinwalker Ranch from a bizarre curiosity into a living nightmare, it's the cattle mutilations. For the Shermans, the mutilations weren't just eerie, they were financially devastating. Ranching was their livelihood, and the cattle were worth thousands of dollars each. To find them slaughtered in such unnatural ways was both horrifying and ruinous. Unlike predator kills, where wolves or coyotes leave torn flesh and bite marks, these cattle were discovered with skin peeled back in perfect circles. Organs were surgically removed with precision no knife could achieve, especially not in the field. In one instance, the reproductive organs were taken out through a hole barely large enough to fit a pencil. There was no blood, not spilled on the grass, not inside the body cavity. It was as though the animal's fluids had been vacuumed away. Even more disturbing, the mutilations often coincided with other phenomena. Glowing lights were reported in the skies the nights before. Strange aircraft-like objects were sometimes seen hovering silently near pastures. The implication was clear. This wasn't random predation, it was experimentation, and the ranchers and their cattle were unwilling participants. Government experiments, the shadow of NIDS. By the late 1990s, Robert Bigelow's National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, had purchased the ranch, bringing in scientists, ex-military personnel, and surveillance equipment. Their mission was to collect hard data on the phenomena, but the ranch had its own rules. Cameras failed, batteries drained, and equipment was mysteriously dismantled. What NIDS did record was chilling. Thermal imaging of invisible beings walking through the pastures, electromagnetic spikes coinciding with cattle mutilations, and strange objects darting through the skies with impossible acceleration. Even stranger was the military's later involvement. Under the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AAT, and its successor projects, the ranch became part of classified research into anomalous aerospace threats. That phrase sounds clinical, but in truth, it meant Skinwalker Ranch was considered more than a curiosity. It was a potential security issue. If entities on the property could manipulate animals, technology, and even human minds, then perhaps they weren't just paranormal. Perhaps they were hostile. Theories of control. One of the most unsettling theories proposed is that the intelligence behind the phenomena is deliberately manipulative. It doesn't just appear, it performs. It shapes events to terrify, confuse, and even humiliate those who observe it. Take the example of mutilated cattle being left in places where the ranchers were guaranteed to find them. Orbs appearing directly in front of researchers, only to vanish the moment cameras were brought to bear. Phenomena repeating itself across generations, as though mocking human attempts to study it. It was as though the ranch itself, or whatever intelligence lived within it, was aware of human interest, and was actively controlling what could and could not be understood. Folklore meets technology. Here lies one of the strangest contradictions. On one hand, the mutilations and apparitions seem to echo ancient legends. Skinwalkers, wolves immune to bullets, spirits haunting cursed ground. On the other, the precision cuts, the surgical extractions, and the advanced aerial craft feel entirely technological. Is it possible that both are true? That what the Navajo once described as skinwalkers are the same entities now perceived as UFO occupants? That technology and witchcraft are only different languages to describe the same incomprehensible intelligence? Some researchers argue the ranch represents the intersection of myth and science, a place where stories of shapeshifters and spacecraft overlap because both are inadequate attempts to name what's happening. The cattle's perspective. It's worth pausing to consider why cattle, of all animals, are at the center of this horror. To ranchers, they were livelihood. To scientists, they were biological data. But to the intelligence behind the mutilations, cattle seemed to be resources, where they studied for their blood, their reproductive systems, their link to human food chains, or were they symbolic, chosen because their suffering would wound their human owners most deeply? There's an eerie possibility that the mutilations weren't about science at all, but theater. A performance designed to instill dread, to communicate through terror that humans are not in control of their world. The hidden motive. No theory of Skinwalker Ranch feels complete because the motives behind the phenomena remain invisible. If it were purely extraterrestrial study, one would expect consistency. If it were spiritual punishment, one would expect ritual patterns. Instead, what emerges is chaos. Mutilations, 1 week, glowing portals the next, shadow figures after that. But perhaps that chaos is the point. The ranch doesn't want to be solved. It wants to break the human desire to solve it. That's why cattle lie dissected without footprints, why wolves walk away from bullets, and why investigators find themselves dismantled psychologically. The ranch isn't just haunted land. It's a mirror of fear reflecting whatever interpretation you bring to it, and then tearing that interpretation apart. Long before the Shermans ever bought the ranch, locals whispered about strange lights over the Uinta Basin. For decades, ranchers, hunters, and even law enforcement reported seeing fiery orbs and metallic craft darting silently through the night. What set Skinwalker Ranch apart was not just the frequency of these sightings, but the intimacy. These lights didn't simply appear in the distance. They swooped low over fields, hovered silently over rooftops, and sometimes cast beams of light down onto the earth. The Shermans described watching objects shaped like rectangles, glowing orange in the dusk. Others saw spinning silver discs that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence. These weren't fleeting, half-second glimpses. They were prolonged encounters, as if the observers were meant to watch. Portals in the sky. One of the most chilling accounts came during the NIDS investigations. Surveillance teams spotted what appeared to be a glowing hole in the air above the ranch. At first, it looked like nothing more than a patch of light, but through telescopes, they saw something horrifying. A black figure crawling out of the glowing aperture, pulling itself into our world. After a moment, the portal sealed shut, leaving the darkness of the sky intact. This wasn't a metaphorical window. It was a literal hole opening into somewhere else. The implications staggered researchers. Skinwalker Ranch might not just be haunted by ghosts or stalked by aliens, it could be sitting atop a tier in reality itself. The trickster phenomenon. Anthropologists studying both native folklore and modern paranormal encounters often return to a single archetype: the trickster. In Navajo tradition, skinwalkers are sorcerers who defy the natural order, shape-shifting and causing chaos. In broader mythology, trickster figures are beings that blur the boundaries between categories man and beast, good and evil, truth and lie. The ranch seems to echo this archetype perfectly. It refuses to be pinned down. Just when researchers think they are dealing with a physical craft, it vanishes like smoke. Just when they believe it is a spiritual haunting, it leaves behind physical evidence. It is both real and unreal, technological and mythical, terrifying and absurd. In this sense, the ranch is less a laboratory of science and more a theater of cosmic trickery. Whoever or whatever is behind the phenomena delights in confusing those who try to understand it. UFOs and cattle. Witnesses often noted that UFO sightings and cattle mutilations seemed linked. Lights would be seen hovering over the pastures at night, and the next morning, an animal would be found dissected. The precision cuts suggested surgical technology far beyond human capabilities, especially in the middle of a field, in the dark, without leaving behind blood or tracks. Some speculate the UFOs were not separate from the mutilations, but the very tools used to carry them out. The crafts may not be ships in the human sense, but mobile laboratories, or worse, hunting instruments. Alternate dimensions. One of the strongest theories to emerge from NIDS and later government interest in the ranch was the idea of interdimensional intrusion. Rather than coming from distant planets, the entities and objects might originate from parallel realities brushing against our own. The strange portals, the vanishing tracks, the sudden appearance and disappearance of creatures, all of these point to unstable boundaries of space and time. Perhaps the Uinta Basin sits on a natural weak spot, a place where the veil between dimensions is thin. If that's true, then what bleeds through may not even be intentional. We could simply be seeing the accidental overflow of other worlds. Living technology. Another disturbing observation came from researchers who felt the UFOs were not piloted vehicles, but living things. Their movements weren't mechanical, but organic, darting like insects, drifting like fish in water, pulsing like bioluminescent creatures of the deep ocean. If true, then the ranch may not just be a landing site for travelers, but a natural feeding ground for otherworldly predators. The cattle mutilations could be less about experiments and more about sustenance. And the humans? Perhaps we are not the scientists in this equation, but the observed or the prey. The human mind as a battleground. A recurring theme among visitors is the way the ranch seems to target the psyche. People report sudden waves of dread, confusion, or paranoia. Time seems to distort. Hours pass like minutes, or minutes stretch into eternity. Shadows move in ways they shouldn't, leaving researchers questioning whether the horror was outside of them or inside their minds. Some scientists now speculate that the ranch may not be just a physical anomaly, but a psychological one. It doesn't just open portals in space, but in thought. If the phenomena can manipulate perception, then every witness is both participant and victim, struggling to tell where reality ends and hallucination begins. What is it protecting? A final question lingers in the minds of many. Why here? Why this stretch of Utah desert? Some believe the land itself hides something. Perhaps ancient structures buried beneath the soil. Perhaps natural minerals that amplify electromagnetic fields. Perhaps even a permanent rift in reality that needs to be watched. The fact that the U.S. government continues to monitor the property long after NIDS left suggests that this isn't just a playground for ghosts and legends, it is considered strategically important. The more we ask what is happening, the more we must ask why here, and what is it covering up. Among the most chilling reports from the ranch are those of shadow creatures. Unlike wolves, orbs, or UFOs, these beings seemed humanoid, yet not entirely solid. Witnesses describe tall, thin figures standing at the tree line, often backlit by moonlight, their forms darker than the night around them. They did not move like animals, they stood still, as if observing. When approached, they vanished. The Shermans often felt they were being watched, not just once or twice, but constantly in the fields, in their home, even while sleeping. The shadows would linger outside windows, reflected faintly in the glass. For many visitors, this was the most unnerving phenomenon of all. Not lights in the sky or mutilated cattle, but the sense of eyes that never blinked, watching from the darkness. Poltergeist phenomena. The ranch was not just haunted by external creatures. Inside the Sherman home, and later, inside the trailers set up by NIDS researchers, objects moved on their own. Doors slammed shut. Heavy furniture scraped across the floor without anyone touching it. Items vanished from tables, only to reappear days later in strange places, such as inside locked cabinets. Even more disturbing, the activity often seemed personal. Tools critical to experiments were deliberately misplaced. Surveillance cameras were found dismantled, screws neatly removed, wires carefully pulled apart, as though mocking the scientists who set them up. This wasn't random chaos, it was targeted interference, and it carried the flavor of a classic poltergeist, a mischievous but malicious intelligence making itself known by breaking human order. The ranch's predator. Some researchers eventually began to ask a terrifying question. What if Skinwalker Ranch wasn't just a place where strange things happened, but a predator in its own right? The theory went like this. The phenomena were not separate events, lights, mutilations, shadows, poltergeists. Instead, they were all different hunting strategies. The ranch, or the intelligence within it, lured humans in, kept them fearful, confused, and off balance, and then fed on that fear. This would explain why activity often spiked when new people arrived, and why it seemed to quiet down once people grew accustomed to it. Fear was the energy source, and once the prey stopped being afraid, the predator moved on. The parasitic hypothesis. Closely related is the parasitic intelligence theory. In this view, the ranch is home to an entity, or perhaps a swarm of entities that attach themselves to human consciousness. They feed on stress, terror, and confusion, the way parasites feed on blood. Accounts of people leaving the ranch only to find the phenomena following them. Strange voices at home, nightmares, poltergeist activity lend weight to this. Whatever it is, it doesn't always stay confined to the Uinta Basin. Once you are marked, you may carry it with you, like a disease of the soul, a living ecosystem. Another way of looking at it is as an ecosystem of anomalies. Just as a rainforest teems with countless species, some visible, some microscopic, some parasitic, the ranch might be a hotspot where multiple types of entities coexist. Shadow figures might be predators, orbs might be scouts, poltergeists might be scavengers. In this sense, the ranch isn't haunted by a ghost or visited by a UFO. It's home to an entire spectrum of phenomena that interact with one another, with animals and with humans. Some feed, some observe, some manipulate. And humans wandering into this system are like hikers stumbling into a jungle full of predators. The role of human consciousness. One of the strangest discoveries from NIDS research was that human expectation seemed to shape the phenomena. When researchers focused on looking for UFOs, lights appeared in the sky. When they studied cattle mutilations, more mutilations occurred. When they set up cameras in one area, activity shifted to another. It was as though the ranch was aware of what people wanted and responded accordingly, but always in a way that denied proof. Some believe this proves the intelligence isn't just external, but interactive, tapping into human minds. The ranch doesn't simply perform random tricks, it customizes its tricks for its audience. This blurring between objective reality and subjective experience deepens the horror. If the ranch can manipulate perception, then what you see isn't necessarily what is there. The shadow watching you from the tree line may be more or less than it appears. A predator that plays. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that the ranch doesn't just feed, it plays with its food. The mutilated cattle left in plain sight, The neatly dismantled surveillance gear, the voices mimicking family members. These acts feel theatrical. Predators in nature rarely toy with prey unless they are supremely confident. Cats will play with mice not because they need to, but because they can. If Skinwalker Ranch is a predator, it is a cat playing with humanity. We are the mice. And there is no cage to keep us safe. Fear as a resource. Why would fear matter? Some paranormal theorists believe that fear, like electrical energy, can be harvested. Negative emotions might create vibrations or frequencies that non-human intelligences can draw upon. In this framework, Skinwalker Ranch is not just a hunting ground, it is a farm, with human fear as the crop. This could explain why the ranch has been active for centuries, drawing stories from native legends, Mormon settlers, ranchers, and modern scientists. As long as humans are present, the ranch feeds. As long as we tell its stories, it grows. When NIDS left the ranch in 2004, it wasn't because the mystery was solved. Quite the opposite. The activity had intensified, yet no clear explanations emerged. Then, quietly, whispers began to spread the government wasn't done with the property. In fact, far from abandoning it, agencies were allegedly increasing their interest. Reports surfaced that elements of the Pentagon were studying Skinwalker Ranch under the guise of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, and related black budget projects. Declassified documents later revealed that phenomena at the ranch were considered part of unidentified aerial phenomena research to the U.S. government. Skinwalker Ranch was not a myth. It was a matter of national security. Secrets behind closed doors. The secrecy bred rumors. Why would government agencies pour millions into studying a ranch in Utah unless something deeply important was happening there? Some believe the ranch serves as a testing ground for understanding exotic physics, gravity, anomalies, wormholes, and interdimensional rifts. Others speculate it's a training site where intelligence agencies learn to deal with psychological warfare, since the ranch seems capable of breaking the human mind. Still others insist the government's interest is darker, that they may already know the ranch is a portal, and they're trying to weaponize it. The media storm. For decades, Skinwalker Ranch was a quiet local legend. But in the 1990s and 2000s, as the Sherman stories spread and NIDS researchers leaked their findings, the ranch became a cultural phenomenon. Television crews, journalists, and documentary filmmakers all descended upon the Uinta Basin, hoping to catch something on camera, but the ranch never made it easy. Just as with scientists, it seemed to toy with the media. Film crews reported batteries draining, cameras failing, audio tapes erasing themselves. No one walked away with irrefutable evidence. Instead, they left with stories eerie, terrifying, but unverifiable. In this way, the ranch ensured its legend grew, while its truth remained hidden, a living mystery. Today, Skinwalker Ranch is privately owned, but remains under heavy surveillance. Security cameras, guards, and restricted access ensure only select individuals can enter. The property has become the subject of TV shows and documentaries, but the central mystery remains unchanged. What is happening there, and why? It is perhaps the most studied paranormal hotspot in the world, yet the answers are no clearer now than they were when the Navajo first spoke of the Skinwalkers. Every camera, every sensor, every scientific instrument brought onto the ranch eventually fails. It's as if the phenomenon refuses to be measured, as though mystery is not a side effect but the point, the warning theory. Some researchers have begun to interpret Skinwalker Ranch not as a random anomaly, but as a warning sign. If the ranch truly is a thinning of the veil between dimensions, then perhaps what we've seen so far, glowing orbs, shadow beings, mutilated cattle, is only the surface, a leak, not a flood. What if the ranch is just one of many weak spots around the world? What if reality itself is fragile, and Skinwalker Ranch is showing us the cracks? The mutilations, the portals, the predators, they may not be the main threat. They may be symptoms of something far larger pressing against our world, a mirror for humanity. Another interpretation is that the ranch is less about them and more about us. By reflecting our fears, expectations, and obsessions back at us, it reveals who we are when confronted with the unknown. To the fearful, it shows monsters. To the hopeful, it shows contact. To the paranoid, it shows surveillance. In this sense, Skinwalker Ranch is a mirror one that forces humanity to confront its deepest anxieties about life, death, and the universe. The real horror may not be the creatures or UFOs, but what they show us about our own fragility, the never-ending story. And so, the ranch continues. New owners, new scientists, new documentaries, all chasing the same thing: proof. But proof never comes. Instead, the stories grow, the mysteries deepen, and the fear spreads. Perhaps that is the ultimate truth of Skinwalker Ranch. Not that it is a place where answers can be found, but that it is a place where answers are always denied. A living puzzle, a predator, a warning, a mirror. Whatever it is, it has survived Navajo curses, Mormon settlers, ranch families, billionaire researchers, and government agents. It has consumed them all, leaving behind stories, scars, and questions that will never fully heal. And if fear really is its food, then by speaking its name, by retelling its stories, by shivering at the thought of its shadows, we are feeding it still.